When I'm studying martial arts in Chicago, Illinois, I was told that after a certain point, and when one had progressed in rank, that it was considered to be customary to cover your head while you were training. We were given uniforms, a formal uniform. Prior to that, when we were first starting out, we would wear workout clothes, exercise clothes. But after a while, we had a uniform, and we were required to wear the uniform even when we were training. At a certain point, you got a sash, and the color of the sash denoted your rank, which also entailed the responsibility that you took on relative to the rest of the group, including potentially some form of training or teaching responsibility. At a certain point, it was understood that you were to cover your head. This was considered a sign of respect and a part of the uniform. This would have been an appropriate head covering. It would have had a different color, depending upon the context and also depending upon the rank, which was denoted by the color of the sash. I do not have a sash. Anybody who knows already knows that at a certain point I made a decision that I was renouncing my formal affiliation and my relationship with that particular concept of what justified me maintaining my rank in the face of what had happened, and I burned my stashes in a private ritual, and I made sure to let the appropriate people know that this is what happened. Nonetheless, I did take into account and did also take on at some point a responsibility where I provided instruction to young people. It was through an after school church program, church based program in Chicago. I taught for a half hour day, 4 days a week, classes in what I understood to be team building and leadership development. The process of engaging in martial arts instruction for young people can be very important. For one thing, it lets them know what their capabilities are. It lets them see themselves training with other people to see what their capabilities are and how they respond. You get to see who has a competitive instinct that needs to be nourished in a particular way, and who might actually even step up in unexpected circumstances into a demonstration of very, very important leadership that might not otherwise have been available to them. The majority of my students were young men. They were to be future leaders. My understanding is that most of them identified as African American. Now, at some point, after providing this martial arts instruction for some time, I had to leave. Other things happened. I knew I was studying martial arts. My hope in studying martial arts is that I would learn how to protect myself physically and maybe be able to assist other people who might have need for self defense, including in responding to or attempting to de escalate threats of physical violence. I also come from a military family that I understood other people with whom I felt a political affinity and supported wholeheartedly in their quest for justice, believed had engaged in actions that were reprehensible and that demanded some form of accountability. I did not go into the military personally. To be honest with you, I understand and respect the military structure and chain of command enough to know that I would not have accepted a commission as an officer under the people who were identified as the commander in chief. There's no point in mincing words about this. There's no point in lying about it either. This is a free country that we live in the United States. Our relationships with people in other parts of the world first have to be grounded in the reality of who we are and where we come from. It would be disingenuous to pretend that we were willing or even capable of accepting the leadership of someone, especially in something that provocative, that we would not or could not. Now, I have these two books here, and I'm going to read samples. I'm not going to comment on them further. The first book is called The Professional Naval Officer, Course to Steer by James A. Winfield Sr. I've read a few pages of this, and this was the first thing I turned to. I'm going to read it now, starting on page 4. First impression is good, or this officer will bear watching until proving his or her ability. Mistakes. Every junior officer and senior officer makes mistakes, but some mistakes are more important than others are. Of course, as you climb the professional ladder, mistakes have greater consequences. Part of being a junior officer is recognizing the stakes involved but not relying on your inexperience to excuse your lapses. Mistakes fall in one or more of several categories: those of inexperience, narrow mindedness, poor judgment, hubris, and lapses in moral behavior. Inexperience. Inexperience is an obvious cause of mistakes. It is your job to get experience to do so quickly and benefit from it. You want to shed the new kid on the block image as quickly as possible. More importantly, you should seek to demonstrate that you are learning and not waiting to be told or spoon fed, that you are taking personal responsibility for learning the ropes, that you can accept responsibility for your shortcomings. Honesty, curiosity, application, and humility are the essential ingredients of success at this early point in your career. Narrow-mindedness. Some mistakes are the result of taking too narrow a view of the problem at hand. In fixing one problem, you may generate others, sometimes called the law of unintended consequences. You may think that it is only necessary to get that report out the door on time, only to find out later that someone reads it and questions its content. Or one of your sailors comes to you with a problem that you quickly fix, only to realize later that you have set a terrible precedent for running your division. You will learn that it is important to know not only what is to be done, but also why it is to be done. Much of the Navy's work may seem to you to be done by the numbers or involve mechanical thinking. From that judgment, it is a quick leap to go into automatic. You must acquire the facility of looking beyond the problem at hand and relating it to the whole of your duties and even your unit's mission. Get the blinders off. Bad judgment. Your entire career is spent in a quest for acquiring good judgment. Bad judgment most often results from a lack of hard work in acquiring all the relevant facts, or impetuosity in rushing to quick decisions, or giving rash orders. No book can give you the skill of good judgment. You must acquire it by getting into the habit of logical thinking, setting priorities, doing the spade work of digging out the relevant facts, looking at any problem from more than one perspective, and by close observation of how more experienced officers discharge their duties. Your test is to put it all together in a way that leads to a workable solution, that looks beyond today's problem, and that sets the course for solving future problems. Your boss may give you some slack in the beginning, but you rely on his or her generosity at your professional peril. Hubris. Some mistakes are made simply because officers have too much, but unwarranted, confidence in their own judgment. It is important to know what you don't know and strive to remedy the deficit. Hubris is an indication of immaturity and perhaps some arrogance. Your bosses will quickly knock you down a peg for such behavior. A little humility, but not too much, is in order. Don't fall into the trap of thinking you are smarter than most of the people around you. You will be a poor shipmate and officer. Lapses in moral behavior. You do not have to be told that an officer does not lie, cheat, or steal. If you don't have that basic equipment in your DNA, your naval career will be unpleasant and short. But there is a subset of moral lapses that is more insidious, less obvious, but just as damaging. It includes gun decking, falsifying or editing reports in the belief it doesn't make any difference or won't be found out, covering for a shipmate in a matter of duty or accountability, disloyal behavior toward your superiors, and slipshod performance of your duties, putting your personal convenience above your obligations to your unit. Your bosses will be unforgiving in the face of such lapses. You were supposed to learn all this in your pre-commissioning training, and the system and you have let your boss down. If you find yourself in such a position, you are in a deep hole and must work your way out of it with evidence that you have learned from your mistake by demonstrating subsequent superior performance. A few, very few, overcome this handicap. Now, this book was published through the Naval Institute Press in Annapolis, Maryland in 2006. His other book, however, I've not completed. I have read through most of it. It is called Murder at Camp Delta, A Staff Sergeant's Pursuit of the Truth About Guantanamo Bay by Joseph Hickman. I'm just going to read one page. Oh, actually, I'm going to read this. I'm going to read a page and a half. Company E was divided into 3 platoons, with each platoon divided into 4 10-man squads, and each squad broken into 2 5-man teams. I was in 1st platoon, 2nd squad, and team leader of its 5-man Bravo team. Everyone from my squad sat together on the plane. Most of them were good soldiers, as far as I was concerned. The guys in my squad covered an extreme range of ages and experiences. Now he notes in the footnote that some of these names have been changed. Philip Bradley, who was 51 years old, was a former Army Ranger, but that was decades ago. He'd spent most of his working life with the coroner's office in Baltimore, picking up and delivering bodies from autopsies and crime scenes. We tag him and bag him, he'd say of his civilian duties. The youngest in our squad was 18-year-old specialist Jamal Stewart, whom we called Youngin. One of the guys I was closest to was Private First Class Jose Vasquez, 38 years old. Vasquez was from D.C., where he worked as a private investigator. I had met him a year earlier in Japan when he deployed there with my unit on a training mission. Everything that came out of his mouth was a joke. Sometimes I had to watch it with Vasquez because he tended to speak his mind to officers. Even if my guy might be in the right, a blunt-speaking enlisted man could get the whole squad in trouble. The one person we all had faith in was our squad leader, Staff Sergeant Michael Hayes. When not on guard duty, Hayes was a cop at Morgan State University, a historically black college in Baltimore. Before that, he was a Marine, and in my experience, former Marines tended to be among the best leaders. He was 6 years younger than me, and though he stood at most 5 feet 10 inches, Hayes carried himself like a giant. In my military career, he taught me more than any other leader I ever served under. With him leading our squad, I had as much confidence as possible. Our squad was predominantly African American. In fact, after 2 white guys were pulled from the platoon, one because he needed for another mission, and one because he couldn't get along with black people, I was the only Caucasian left. Vasquez was light-skinned, but a proud Mexican. Like most people in the military, race and ethnicity didn't concern me. Soldiers were soldiers. But everybody else in our platoon was white, and that bothered all of us. They had segregated all the black guys and the Mexican into one squad. I guess they figured I belonged because I was from Baltimore. It was wrong, and all of my guys knew it. The military has spent decades integrating its units. For commanders to segregate a unit was almost unheard of in 2006. Worse, it made us very uneasy about the overall wisdom of our company's officers. Despite my positive impression of Staff Sergeant Hayes, the leadership of our company was the biggest concern on my mind. Our training experience at Fort Lewis with our commanders had been, in a word, awful.